Now for something completely different.
So, I've decided to take a little holiday from the V12 Roadster project. But don't worry, it's only for a few weeks and we'll soon be back on that one. However, sometimes it's good to try something a little bit different and work on one of my many other projects for a bit. In this case, I'm introducing my extremely scruffy Cobra replica that you might have seen in the background of some of the Roadster projects sitting on the car lift. Now, this is actually the first car I built with my dad, starting some 30 years ago. And as will be revealed over the next few weeks, it was built from one of the worst Cobra kits that has ever existed, the classic replica Viper. The Viper kit was different from all other replicas in one very striking way. The front wheel arches are super wide, so that you can fit the standard front suspension from the Jaguar XJ6. Now, this wouldn't normally have been such an issue, except that my version doesn't use XJ6 suspension. It actually uses Ford Cortina, which is much narrower and means that you either have the front wheels with a massive offset to fit the arches, or the wheels just end up looking lost and too tucked in. Oh, and before anybody starts laughing at using Ford Cortina suspension, I'd like to point out it's actually a very good double wishbone design, and it's perfectly usable for a classic style car such as this. Anyway, the dream of what I want to get to is for it to eventually look something like this. The sad reality is, though, that currently it looks like this. A while ago, in fact quite a while, 10 years in fact, I started the process of narrowing the front arches to fit the correct offset wheels. But also, because I really liked the super wide rear arch look, I started widening the rear arches for a set of massive split rim wheels I'd had made for the car. However, having widened the rear arches, I then stood back and realised I'd actually made the world's stupidest looking Cobra. The pictures here really don't do justice to just how bad this thing looked. But I made it look like one of those super caricature images you see of cars with giant wheels, etc. Anyway, it looked stupid, so it had to go. So I then started hacking the wings apart out the back to narrow them again. And around that time, I also lost access to the workshop that I was doing this all in, and generally got a bit fed up with the whole thing. So I did what all good purveyors of nearly finished car projects should do. I put it on my garage lift, covered it with a sheet, and called it good. So the first step was to be able to get access to the car itself so I could start working on it. And as I'm sure any of you dear viewers that suffer from the same problem I do, is that I have too many cars and not enough space. So the V12 Roadster needed to be shuffled back, and various workbenches and toolboxes needed to be dragged out from under the Cobra. This led to an unfortunate situation where it actually is not that easy to film in here now without something else getting in the way. But I'll get it sorted over the next few weeks so you can all hopefully see what I'm up to. The eagle-eyed of you might notice there is a very non-Cobra looking bonnet sitting on top of the Cobra. And this is actually a fiberglass bonnet from a Series 3 E-Type that was part of an earlier crazy plan that I had of grafting it onto the front of the V12 Coupe project. Don't worry though, it really didn't fit, but I hate throwing it away, so it just hangs around in the garage, generally getting in the way. With that shifted, I could then uncover the actual Cobra, which as you can see was a pretty dusty process, but I got it done. Now, you may also notice that I have a hardtop for the car, but I think for now, just so I can feel like I've made some progress, I'm going to leave that off the project and just focus on getting the vehicle roadworthy again. As I said before, it's been about 10 years since this has been on the road, and it would just be nice to be able to use it a bit. So I decided that the first step was to see if I could get it to run again. It's been a very long time since it's been running, so I thought it'd be good to hear the engine fire up. Sadly, I'd noticed that the fuel pump had given up at some point in the past, so I temporarily wired in a replacement, and as you can see, this is as far as I got with the wiring, but we can soon fix that. And here is the engine. It's a 4.6 litre Rover V8 with stage 2 heads and a reasonably hot cam, so it should be good for around 280 to 300 horsepower, which is plenty enough in a car weighing about a metric tonne, or around 2,500 pounds for my American friends. So the first attempt was to hit the starter button and see what happens. The battery's flat. That's what happens.
Oh, come on!
Yeah, I normally leave all my cars on trickle chargers, but I guess in my haste to cover the car up and forget about it, I completely forgot to do this. Not to worry, a brief spell with my heavy-duty battery booster got some life back into it. Now, whilst I was waiting for the battery to get some charge into it, I took the opportunity to visit all my project cars, and just for a laugh, see how many I could get to fire up. If you're interested in this little side adventure on this side project, drop a comment below and I'll include it in my next video. I'll give you a clue though, there were some dramas. Anyway, battery charged, it was time to press the start button and see if she'd fire up. Well, I can't say I was that surprised, to be honest. So it's time to start diagnosing the issue. I'm pretty sure it was ignition based, as having sprayed some easy start into the carb, normally even without fuel I would expect the engine to cough, but it was literally doing nothing. So I pulled a plug lead off and, having inserted a suitable screwdriver, held it close to a metal part of the engine and tried again. And no spark. So I concluded this was all probably because the engine earthing strap had become corroded. And lo and behold, having undone it, there was in fact a little bit of corrosion that can happen when aluminium and steel are bolted together. A few moments with some emery cloth soon cleaned things up. Still no joy, but there was at least a spark now, but a very weak one. So I turned my attention to the battery terminals themselves and again found a little corrosion. This was again rapidly cleaned up with the emery cloth and we were ready for another try. That was more like it. So, with the fuel pump reconnected, I could then see if it would run and tick over, whilst I checked I was getting oil pressure. The Rover V8 has an external oil pump which is slightly prone to draining out, so after standing for a while, you have to check carefully that you still have oil pressure. If we don't, it's a pain to reprime. So, did we? Yep, full oil pressure, which was great to see. Now, if you listen here, you can hear that the tappets are really noisy at the moment, but that's because the engine has hydraulic lifters, and they can take a few minutes to build up their own oil pressure, so I'm not worried about them at this stage. I think next I'll do a full oil service, and then we can allow it to run up to temperature and we can check if there are any other issues. Plus, of course, we should then turn our attention to the bodywork. On a different note, it would be really helpful if you could subscribe if you like this video. We're getting really close to 5k subscribers, and I'd love to be able to do a special video just about that. You know, over half of you watching aren't actually subscribed, and YouTube doesn't always recommend these videos every week. So do me a favour and hit the button especially for that. I'll see you next time.